go to the lines, beginning with Bob in Clearfield. Hey, Bob, how are you?
Hi, thank you, sir. I was down at the game today, and the last time I encountered an atmosphere as depressing and a stronger sense of capitulation was in the 1985 drug trial year where myself and a handful of other people would sit there at the Rivers Stadium. And
That was pretty bad. Now, I don't know if I'd compare that to this.
But I think, though, what happened is when that culture of losing is established, you don't come back from that immediately without almost a very major change in the roster and through trades and free agents. But you're not going to see that happen. And so this will look good. That's all I can say, though, because that when you have something a lose streak this severe, it's something you don't turn around quickly. So that's what my comments. That's what I thought. Seeing what I saw down there today.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, right now, again, this team had an opportunity, I thought, with some help that they could have straightened things out. They needed pitching help when everything was falling apart with injury-wise. And, if you want to use that as an excuse, it happens. A lot of teams have injuries. Look around the National League. You'll find teams with the same, at times, critical injuries to critical people. The Cardinals lost their closer. They haven't had Matt Carpenter in a while. They've had to overcome it also, and they're tied for first place, too. So no one's going to feel sorry for the Pirates. They haven't helped their own cause, and they need to draft better. They need to develop better. There seems to be some comfort with everyone, in charge. Even despite what's gone on, no changes are expected to be made, and both Clint Hurdle and Neil Huntington agreed to 4-year extensions last year when some wondered whether or not that was even deserved. If you're comfortable with the situation you're in and there won't be change, then you wonder about accountability. At this point, this is a last-place team. This is a team right now that has the second-worst record in the National League. This is an ownership group that has talked about competing, winning championships, and they haven't come close in 12 years. So those are all just facts. Wonder what's going to happen next, if anything. Brian in Evansburg. What's up, Brian? How are you?
Hello. How are you doing this evening?
Good, thank you.
Well, calling about the Pirates, they suck. Terrible. Bad. It's time to start moving, getting rid of people, especially veterans, and bringing in prospects and trying to build.
So what would you then talk about guys like Vasquez, and who else would you trade?
I would not trade Vasquez, keep him, but get rid of the guy that pitched last night, how terrible he was.
Yeah, but what are you going to get for Jordan Lyles? I mean, his stock has dropped dramatically since he first started here. The Pirates signed him to a 1-year, $2 million deal, and he was worth $2 million. He didn't exactly have a lot of pursuers out there. And now you've seen him come back to earth. And I always say this at the beginning of the season, and I thought this would be a fourth-place team just because they don't have enough talent. 162 doesn't lie. When you have to play an entire season, you may be okay in April and May. You may look good. You may deceive people, but 162 doesn't lie. And right now, they are where they are, which is in the basement. Al in Bethel Park. What's up, Al? How are you?
Hey, Bob. First of all, thank you for letting people voice their opinions, even though they're not popular with the masses. Thank you very much for that.
No problem.
Appreciate that. All I'm going to say tonight is congratulations to Mike Tomlin on getting his extension. He signed for 3 years, this year, next year, and a year after. And to all the people out there who are haters, some of it is racially motivated. I got to say sorry about your darn luck. And, Bob, thank you again for you letting us voice our opinions. Thank you.
No problem. I think Mike Tomlin deserves it. Again, I asked the question, you can do a lot worse. Who else would you want? You can tell me about not enough playoff wins. They know that. But one thing I've seen with Mike Tomlin over the years is his teams, and last year was an aberration. There were a lot of reasons that went into that. Mostly, missed field goals that could have won games, turnovers at critical times. But those teams, even after bad starts, I go back to the one where they started 0-4. I believe they had lost in England, and they came home, and you thought, okay, 0-4, they're going to end up with a top 10 draft pick or worse. They turned it around. They won 8 of 12. They finished 8-8. It may not have helped them in the draft, but it shows you that nobody is just tuning him out, so to speak. No one is not listening. They're performing. I think that has to be considered as part of the equation here. So I always have said you can. They added one more year to it. Next offseason we'll be talking about the same if things don't go well this year. But I have a feeling this is going to be a good season for the Steelers. I do. Jerry in Indiana joins us right now on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Hey, Jerry.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for getting me on here.
Sure.
And what I wanted to comment about the Pirates is the injuries. Well, the Cardinals, they have their bad luck of injuries too.
They
Just
have.
swept us in 4 games. So we just, I'm a Pirate fan, but they need to do some things and to get rid of some guys and spend some money. All right, thanks, Bob.
Yeah, I think it starts at the top. I think it's hard, and I'm not making excuses, for some of the bad maybe drafts that they've had or lack of players, because I think Neil Huntington is a very smart man, and I think he knows a lot about baseball, but I also know that he is very much handcuffed when it comes to a budget. So, again, to sign on, you must be okay with that. And if you're okay with that, then you know that you can't do all that much with it. And you better make sure all of your trades and evaluations work, because if they don't, you're not going to get much help. And that's what happens when you have a payroll that doesn't exceed $77 million. And listen, I want to see them win. I think Bob Nutting wants them to win, but he's not willing to change his budget to do so. And this is different than running a business. This is running a baseball team where you have to do that at times to make it happen. And they had their opportunities. I'm not going to keep mentioning Keuchel. For the last time, I will. He was available at no cost to player lost. They wouldn't have lost a draft pick. They wouldn't have lost a player in their system. All they had to do was come up with some money to pay him. And he's had a pretty good impact with the Braves already. We'll see what happens down the road. But he could have helped them certainly at a time when they needed help. Line 4 we go. Pete in Squirrel Hill joins us on the Sports Call. Hey, Pete.
Hey, Bob. Welcome back. You were missed, buddy.
Oh, appreciate it. Thanks.
Two points, Bob. Number one, there's 2 types of organizations in professional sports: those that hope to win, those that expect to win. The Pirates are the early one. They hope to win. But I wanted to ask you a question about something. A lot of people go back and forth on this issue, Bob. How much impact the manager has on the game of baseball for a 162-game season?
Okay.
Some people say he matters. Some people say he really doesn't. Can you explain to me, Bob, the San Francisco Giants? They've gone 16-4 in their past 20 games. They're right in the wild card hunt after they were 20 games under 500 early in the year with an outfield that are cast off, Bob, from other teams that nobody wanted. It has to come down to that manager. So, by the way, Bob, is the best in the game.
First of all, Bruce Bochy, he's won 3 championships. He's a Hall of Famer, but he has also had some bad seasons. And this looked like one of them as well, Pete. But you're right. And if you watch what they do, and I follow what they do, they don't have a lot of big names on that team, but they have some pitchers who've all of a sudden started to pitch well. And now it leads them into a situation where they're probably going to buy at the deadline instead of trade. There's a lot of talk about Bumgarner. Now he's not going anywhere. I wouldn't trade him if you're trying to make a run to and we've seen the Giants when they get in. When they get in, they're pretty good, even as a wild card, as the Pirates found out painfully here. 412-575-2600. We are due for a break. We have Dick, Tony, Daniel, and Joyce all coming up next right here. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.